Welcome back. You're watching the 2023 verdict, and this coming to you live from Channels Television. Remember, Sunrise now transmutes into that program 7 to 10 a.m. weekdays here at Channels. Well, as you've seen in that welcoming slide, Winston Osuchukwu joins us next. He's a financial executive and the Fintech executive. Good morning, Mr. Osuchukwu, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, you have been keeping tabs clearly on the developments across the country, and several scenarios these days playing out. Of course, you have the big picture in mind, which is the presidential election, the National Assembly elections in the first instance. And there are several policies that have been put in place, which many think, if not checked, it could have adverse effects on the forthcoming election. So perhaps you could just start off by giving us your impression of how you think economic considerations or policies can impact these elections.
Again, thank you for having me. Economic policies will form a central part of how people make their decisions on who to vote for in the upcoming election. As we start to see the world in general is going through significant economic turmoil as inflation starts to rise in the West, something that hasn't happened in the last 20, 25 years. That is just going to roll downhill and affect countries in the global South like Nigeria and the rest of them. So as people go to the polls, they will go to the polls with, as they say, pocketbook things in their mind, up on their mind, asking those questions. Which of these people out there has the best plan to ensure that my tomorrow is going to be better than my today?
Okay, Mr. Osuchukwu, I think we might have lost your sound there, but I will just double check and see if either, well, did you mute or unmute? Not sure I can hear you here.
No, I did not.
Oh, okay, fine. Go ahead, please. We lost you momentarily. Go ahead, please. Apologies.
Okay, I was saying at the end of the day, economic factors are always central to elections. People will make their decisions based on which candidate, which party presents a platform that they can credibly see a better tomorrow for themselves than today. So as all the parties jostle for position, I think it's very important that they take the time to, in very plain English, very simple terms, put out what it is that the economic plans are, especially in these times when there's a significant amount of global turmoil happening with inflation rising across the world.
For fintech executives like yourself, what matters would you say are the most important to you?
Interestingly enough, things like the ongoing change in the Naira is something that's important to us. If it has the effect of increasing the amount of people that move from physical to using internet banking and electronic payments, that's great for us. It brings a lot more people into that net, which means a lot more people can transact in a cheaper, safer, and more traceable manner. And if you look at it for the banking sector as a whole, I think most people should remember this. Banks cannot create loans if they don't have deposits. So if you take 50% of all the cash in the system and you take it outside of the bank, that is 50% more credit that cannot be created by the banks, which would go into growing the economy and helping both large and small businesses grow.
Well, you do know that loans for a while, people say that you can tell what a man will do by what he's done before. You do know that loans for a while to the private sector has been quite a challenge. The private sector, especially the organized private sector, has always complained about the exorbitant interest charged on loans, making it almost impossible for a lot of them to take advantage of the fact that people deposit money in banks. But looking at our literacy levels and looking at the challenges that we've faced so far with the currency swap or with the currency redesign, if you prefer, would you say that there could be any chance that people could be discouraged from putting their money in the banks?
I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, for most people in the urban areas, putting your money in the bank is something that people already do. Most people already transact using electronic forms. So I don't think it's going to do that. And more importantly, as people start to use more and more banking services and see the added benefits that a lot of both old-time banks and neobanks are offering their customers, I think what you will find is the new depositors or the new entrants into the financial system will see, number one, the benefits by way of safety, efficiency, and the added advantages that they get, be it being able to purchase things at a discount or what have you, that banks offer.
People, would you say that the banks and fintechs are really in tune with what it is that the people want? Yes, we can argue that young people seem to, dominated the fintech space, and, there are many more entrants coming into it almost on a daily basis, appealing to the young, to the young population. But then there is also another demographic which might be left behind. Those who are illiterate, those who might not really understand, and those who say, look, some of the charges which they get, for instance, even to get, say, an alert on the phone that money has been paid or money has been debited, some people would rather not have alerts because they're going to be charged as much as 4 Naira. I don't know whether it is that people, fintechs and even the regulators and even the banks are really in tune with some of the things that the people desire from this transition.
Well, the one thing that I would say is, and this has been a problem for financial inclusion, which is people, especially those at the lower rungs of the economic pyramid, feel like they are paying too much for what they get from the banking system. So I think there are a number of things that the banking system itself can do, allowing people to opt out of certain things. If you don't want to get alerts from when payments are made or monies are received, or to set a threshold, those are the kind of things that I think the banks and fintech can do for their customers to help them get those numbers down. But on the flip side, all the people who are not in the banking system should remember, you cannot benefit from a system that you are not part of. So if you're not in the banking system and you're running a business, that means your business cannot take advantage of any kind of loan system, any kind of system whereby the federal government decides to actually put cash in the hands to do some direct support to the populace, because those will usually be done electronically, given that it's the most efficient way to do things like that. And so at the end of the day, I think we just need to meet each other in the middle. So the banking system needs to give people more options on how to get on how to use the banking system in the most efficient way possible. And on the other side, the people should also spend that time to engage the banks and tell them exactly what it is that they want. And I think at the end of the day, what you'll find is competition will help drive down those costs. And if everybody looks back at what we've seen with the mobile phone era, from the point where you have to pay for SIM cards and you can only buy your phones from the telcos, to today where those things are, where you have an ultimate choice of where you get your phones from, and the SIM cards are almost free. That's the kind of that happens when the market starts to grow and competition ensues.
Well, Mr. Osuchukwu, perhaps it might be a good idea to backtrack to how some of the challenges, economic challenges we are contending with now came to be. I've been hearing about austerity measures or economic upheavals since the Second Republic, and it would seem like the situation's only gotten worse over the years. Policies and politics and everything continue to go, and it will seem like prices of stuff just keep getting higher and higher by the day. Living standards continue to be a concern, and as you said, it is now a global phenomenon. For us as a nation, the biggest black nation in the world, the most populous, what are the peculiar challenges that have been with us for very many years that we have been unable to track? And that if anyone does not do, any presidential candidate or the next level of leaders we're bringing in do not do something about it, we are in for a much worse hand.
Well, I would say this much. To say that what has been wrong we were unable to track would be disingenuous. The problems of the country have always been clear. we are a country that has lived on exporting unprocessed raw materials, and at the end of the day, turning around and importing the processed products and the resultant products from those back into the country. We have not made the necessary investments over time in the infrastructure in productive infrastructure that drives the economy. And when you continue to not invest in the system, you continue to grow a population. That is a recipe to have what you see now, which is you have standards of living that have declined significantly, and you have a currency that has continuously weakened because we're an import dependent country. So what do we have to do to move forward? We have to make the really hard decision. All the political parties are saying it. The fuel subsidy has to go. Because if you think about it, oil is fungible. If you take away the fuel subsidies, whereby market prices reign, I see no reason why people that export fuel or people that are in the fuel business would not want to build refineries close to the source and reduce their cost of transportation of the product, where they're transporting higher value products rather than lower value products. So those are the kind of things that we need to do. We need to float the Naira. And when we talk about floating the Naira, here's simply what it means. It means that when an investor is coming into the country, they know exactly what their dollars will purchase at any point in time. Today, if you ask an investor to come into Nigeria, they will ask you a simple question: how much is my Naira worth? Is it worth what the central bank tells me, or is it worth what it's actually exchanging for on the street in day-to-day smaller transactions? So we need to make those hard choices. And then finally, the final major choice we need to make is to focus for the near future on moving all our resources to growing the productive economy. And to grow the productive economy, that means we might have to step back from some things that are not generally productive, so to speak. So we should be looking at making sure that there is power and infrastructure to areas that actually support industry. And as you move forward, like anything else, as the industry grows, they employ people, people get wealthier, and as people get wealthier, they will start to demand goods and services that someone will come in to fill the gap. And that's what we have not done. And hopefully we get to do that. And if we don't, we're just going to continue this story until whenever we decide to do it. There's no magic bullet.
It is the expectation, Mr. Osachukwu. Speaking of backtracking, you know, many have had quite a lot to say about the new currency redesign. And part of the conversation is, look, this is not the first time that Nigeria has had to redesign its currency. You know, many refer to the change of the 100 Naira to celebrate Nigeria's, centenary anniversary, the transition of the 20 Naira, 10 Naira, 5 Naira notes into polymer prostrates. And it didn't come with this amount of difficulty for the Nigerian people. So what's different this time, between 10 years back when all of that happened and now? Why the difficulty?
I really can't put my finger on it. At the end of the day, it should be a fairly simple process. You have cash, you deposit it into the bank. Now, the central bank setting limits on how much cash you take out, that makes a lot of sense too, because the whole idea was to take cash out of the system and put it into the banking system so that the banking system can deploy that cash and start to grow the economy, which is exactly what we want the central bank to do. So now, the question now we have to ask is it that bad, or are we making it look that bad? There are people standing in lines, you see the riots, you see the chaos. That looks very bad, but fundamentally, should it be? Like I said, from a lot of people I talk to, people do almost everything they do, at least in the cities, electronically. Given that only the largest notes are being changed, if you go to the hinterland, you will see that most of the transactions that they undergo are done with much smaller denominations. And the other thing is, it is critical that we start to bring people into the banking system and move to an electronic system, because it is expensive to manage the sheer volume of notes that we have in the system. That is actually very expensive. So why it's been so difficult, it's one of those things that I cannot put my finger on it. Maybe that the execution has just not been as good as before. But I do think that this is one of those places where people need to take a beat and calm down and realizing the fact that, number one, get your money into the bank as quickly as you can, and then take your money from the bank as you need it. While on the flip side, I think both the banking system and the regulators need to find a lot of other ways to let people know exactly what they're doing and provide them a lot more outlets for them to be able to exercise it.
And besides that, benefits that you quoted about reining in inflation by, controlling the cash reserve ratio and, all of that, others also talk about other benefits, the vote buying component, strengthening the lower denominations, but we can't also discountenance what the politicians are saying about this being a wrong time. Is there a wrong time to do the right thing as far as the economy is concerned?
Absolutely not. If the politicians are upset that they don't have cash to go buy votes, well, they should correct someone else. I don't think the country should be in the business of making it easy for politicians to ply their trade. The only responsibility that anybody in the government has is to ensure that there is an economy for us to go after. Because at the end of the day, the elections are going to happen in 2 days. And after that, we're still going to be living in the same economy. So why wait to take your medicine tomorrow, the medicine you can take today? Your colleague has mentioned, we have been hearing the same thing for the last 40-odd years. And that has been because in the last 40-odd years, we have not taken the hard decisions. So why are we waiting one more day? India did the same thing. And what did that do for India? It caused the same kind of general unrest. The people who had the most resources in cash sitting at their homes complained. But at the end of the day, life went on. India had a much shorter period to get it done. And what happened on the back end of it? Tax collection increased significantly because now most of the transactions were done electronically, which the government could trace and tax. And those tax revenues are what we're going to use to build the country. There's no other place that the money is going to come from.
You think this whole Naira swap stuff is about vote buying?
In all honesty, I don't even think about that part of it. I think removing large denominations from the system in general reduces the amount of corruption that there is in the system. That is clear, because now it's more difficult to do things like that. So just look at the sheer volume of money that you have to carry, because people prefer to do things that are illicit in cash. But that part is of little interest to me. At the end of the day, what is of interest is we're taking a lot of cash that is idle and sitting idly outside of the banking system, putting it into the banking system so that we can generate the credit that are necessary to grow this economy. And at the end of the day, I think a thriving economy benefits every single Nigerian.
Just before we go, can you take a quick peek on this issue of political will in order to deal with these economic challenges confronting us? What do you make of it when you hear that it's the leadership does not have the political will to do the right thing? Do you see that as a big deal, or is just political talk?
In all honesty, this is not a Nigerian problem. Having the political will to make hard decisions is something that we have a deficiency of on the entire planet. If you look around the countries, take your pick. Nobody in the last 20-25 years has gone out and made those hard decisions, because every politician has only one key performance indicator: to hold power or to get higher office. And for you to do either one of those things, you have to keep the electorate happy. Well, the problem with making hard choices is it usually requires some sacrifice in the near term for a benefit that comes out in the long term. So if we look at Nigeria, it might be the case of the fuel subsidy and letting the dollar float. If we look at globally, we continue to struggle with things like climate change. There are most of the countries that we term as great are suffering from things like crumbling infrastructure and what have you, because they continue to not have people with the political will to do what is necessary. In some cases, whether it be raise taxes or provide adequate support for people who are the lower ends of society. So it is a global thing. And the one thing I've always said is we need leaders, not politicians. And until we find leaders in the system, the planet as a whole is going to continue this slow march to what does not look very nice.
Well, I guess we're going to have to come up with another paraphernalia or criteria to determine the difference between a leader and a politician. But please, it's not something for you to answer now. Winston Osichukwu is a fintech executive. Thank you so much for your time and perspectives today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. 2023 verdict returns after now. Do stay with us.